Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask Zenatta Anything About Zoho. This is Volume 1, Issue Number 13 from Zenatta Consulting. I am Brett Martin and I am joined by Greg Belknap, Josh Oliver, and Tyler Colt. And this is the show where we take your questions, whether they're from YouTube or you head over to club.zenatta, which is our online community, and drop a question there. You leave us a question and we answer them. And we've got quite a few this week. And with that, let's get right to it.
Alrighty, first question here comes from a video from back in 2020, Beginner's Guide to Zoho CRM Workflows over on YouTube. This is from Metix, and the question is, hey, great video as always, thank you. I just stumbled upon the Journey Builder / Command Center, and it got me confused a bit. It looks really similar to blueprints and workflows. Would you guys recommend using the Journey Builder / Command Center, or can you maybe do a video on the subject? It would help me out a lot. Thanks. So yeah, good question. You know, there's a million different ways to kick off a task, an email, a kind of process inside of CRM. For me, I almost never find myself using Command Center. Generally, I find blueprints, workflows, tasks, things like that to be a lot more straightforward and easy. It's kind of where, sometimes, and this isn't to say that if we don't have a video on something, we don't think it's a good feature, but oftentimes we make videos on the things that we use a lot, right? So we've got videos on workflows, videos on blueprints, but Command Center, guys, really the use case there, right, is it's kind of like blueprinting, but in the activities modules specifically, kind of across certain records. Am I understanding kind of Command Center correctly that way?
I think so.
I do not know. I haven't spent much time in Command Center either, so I do know it's kind of like templated, it's flow-charted workflows. What you can trigger within that, I haven't spent much time in there, so I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I guess really, Medics, like when we get into it, like if we're going to map out a pretty detailed process that's going to have a variety of different tasks and emails and meetings and calls and things like that, we just use a blueprint. Because then you just tie that whole process to a pick list of like stages or statuses, and you get so much more control than you really ever could within just Command Center. So I'd recommend going that way. It's not to say we'll never make a video on it, but one of us would have to learn it a lot more deeply before we could do that.
All right. Next question here comes after watching Zoho Inventory, Shopify, and WooCommerce Best Practices, a video that I did with Cody about maybe a month and a half ago. In this question, Josh Boswell asks, awesome video. Thanks for the tutorial. You're welcome. Is there any way to connect WooCommerce with Zoho without using the plugin that I demo in the video? Couldn't we use Zoho Flow for the connection as it connects with WordPress, WooCommerce, and everything else? Let me know. Thanks, Josh. You're welcome. Thank you, Josh. The answer is yes. You certainly can use WooCommerce within Zoho Flow. And if I share my screen here, you'll see some of the connection triggers we have inside of Zoho Flow for WooCommerce specifically. And these are all real time. So as soon as a customer is added or as a customer is updated, then you could create that customer within WorkDrive. And specifically the ones you would want to use would be order created, order updated. Maybe you want to sync your products. All of these you certainly could use as a real-time integration from WooCommerce into Zoho Books. So certainly if you wanted to build this out, you could. It's just going to require a few separate flows depending on what you want integrated. If it's just whenever an order is created, then maybe it's just one flow, but you likely want to set up a connection if the order is updated. And then additionally, you might want to also write it back from Zoho Books if that order is updated in Books, moving it back into WooCommerce. But you have that flexibility with Zoho Flow. I haven't created that connection, so I wouldn't be able to tell you step by step how to do it, but it shouldn't be too hard. Whenever an order is created, you need to fetch the product and then add that product to the sales order when you create that sales order in Zoho Inventory. So again, yes, totally doable. It's just going to require some setup and some maintenance to get that to work.
Also, for those that are watching us on YouTube, Freddie, I really like the little icon that was at the bottom corner of this question. because the WooCommerce logo is above the Shopify one, so it looks like the Shopify bag is saying Woo, which I'm sure the Shopify people hate. I'm sure if anybody from Shopify is watching, they're like, stop making our logo shout out other companies.
All righty. Our next question comes from Timothy Quinn, who says, my number one marketing priority is a weekly newsletter campaign sent to all leads and contacts. I want to post a sign-up form on LinkedIn in an effort to gain new subscribers. What do you think is the best process? Well, LinkedIn is a little funny there. So really, Timothy, you've got a choice. You could put it in your contact info, which lives right under your name. That's really the only place. Or you could write put it in your about section. You could write an article that basically pushes to it. That will show up there. But they're really not into kind of dropping all those links. So, I would put it right on your main page. Where you can maybe just add a link to it there, and definitely add it into your contact info, and maybe put a little blurb on there about it. And that's really the only thing you can do on LinkedIn to get it out there. I think you can actually pay to do a push to all of your contacts and others, and you can drop it out that way. But honestly, there's just you're kind of limited there. But I would put it everywhere. Put it in your email signature, so everybody's going to get that. Everything you kind of send out, put it on your website, make sure it's you're pushing it every way you can. And eventually it will grow. So thanks for giving me one of the hard questions, guys. This was a really detailed, complex question here. Appreciate that. And you'll see when I did have to do something a little later on the show, the havoc that was caused. So wait for that, shall we? All right, Timothy.
A little nugget there. Get people to stick around. That will be a funny one.
You definitely want to stick around for that question.
All right. This next one also comes from Club Z from Chrissy, who asks, I currently have our new employee onboarding instructions located in the knowledge base, referring to Zoho Desk. And I have to wait for the user to accept the knowledge base new user invitation before I can assign the employee group. Ideally, I would like my new employee flow to do this, but in the meantime, is there a way to add any groups when I send the invitation? Thank you. Well, unfortunately, you've already hit the nail on the head that the way that Zoho Desk is set up, you cannot add a end user to a group until they are an active user, meaning that they have indeed accepted their invitation. And from everything that I could search for, there is no way to sort of pre-bake a group assignment in an invitation until it's been accepted. Now, when I was doing some thing, and you guys can chime in and think if you guys think this is too crackpot or not, but you could set up a checkbox because these end users, they exist as a contact in Desk, right? And then you invite them. If you make sure that they exist as a contact in Desk first, you could have like a checkbox called like auto assign on knowledge base activation or something like that. Then have a scheduled function that would check for any recently edited users via API, see if that checkbox is checked, and then if that checkbox is checked, verify that they are already a part of that group that you want have access to the knowledge base, or if they're not, to then use the API to add them to that group.
Are they referring to departments
Like
inside
a
of Desk,
team.
or is it something separate than departments?
No, so this is talking about that if you have, if you're using the help center and you're having end users log in to use the knowledge base, then you can set up certain articles to be attached to certain groups. So that way, not everybody who has access to your knowledge base has access to all the articles. You can say, well, people that are, say that you wanted to have your employees and your customers both accessing the knowledge base, you would want your employees having access to a different set of articles than your customers, or at least they probably have access to more articles than your customers do. And that's what these groups are referring to, is you can assign sort of view permissions to articles in your knowledge base for certain people to look at them.
Yeah. Also, Chrissy, if all these people are actually going to be using Zoho at one time, if they're Zoho users and you're on Zoho 1, you could move this whole thing over to Zoho Learn. And then as soon as they become a Zoho user, you could automatically give them access to Zoho Learn, and then it could sit there. Or you could just move them out of the knowledge base altogether and put these onboarding instructions in as a PDF in a folder and just send them the link to it. I mean, if it needs to
organize this all just in Work Drive instead.
Yeah, there's a couple ways you could go around that, I would imagine, that would give them access to it.
All right, so this is a question that was posted over on Club Zenatta in the general discussion. Post name, WhatsApp was up ticket. This is from Inam. When someone who is already in my CRM contacts sends a message or ticket through WhatsApp, I then want to assign the ticket to the contact owner of that contact automatically. If not, so assuming maybe that contact doesn't exist yet, or they're owned by, someone who isn't a user, a normal user, then let's leave it as a normal ticket open for everyone. Good question. This is very easily doable. We'll do this with a little workflow and custom function in Deluge. So whenever a ticket is created, I'm assuming over in Desk, you can pretty easily write a function that will reach into CRM and essentially try to find that contact. And you could search based on the email, the phone number, right, the WhatsApp name, whatever you have on them on the Desk side of the house. You could search in CRM, find that owner, right, bring it right back and assign that same user as the agent assigned to that ticket. You'd want to put in a couple little fail safes, right? Like maybe certain owners in CRM don't use Desk, so those need to go into the open queue or this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, yeah, very doable. Just needs a little bit of Deluge script in a workflow.
Next one here is after watching last week's AZAAZ, Superior Trucking Payroll Services asked us, hi guys, can I either add a custom line to the Zoho Books main menu to import invoices instead of clicking through to it, or build an API to import the file? Thanks for the info. I appreciate your work. To be honest, I'm not too sure what they're asking in this one. I think they're wanting a quicker way to import files to Zoho Books directly. And I'm not sure if this is for, this is for invoices specifically. Really, I think the short answer is no, you can't customize Zoho Books UI. And it's really not too hard to import invoices, assuming that your CSV is properly formatted, directly into Zoho Books. So I think the easiest answer is no, just import it the way Zoho Books wants you to and use a CSV to import. Now, if you're importing, let's say you're exporting from another application and you're exporting that as a CSV and then taking that export and importing it into Books, likely you could bypass that whole step of exporting and importing if your other application supports some sort of custom function in which you would be able to utilize Zoho Books API to bulk add invoices or to just create invoices real time whenever that invoice is created inside of that other app. So Zoho Books obviously does offer an extensive API, which you could either create individual invoices or bulk invoices. Now, if that's not possible and you're just given an Excel document or a CSV, you're going to have to follow the normal steps or the standard steps that Zoho Books has for importing. If you want a sample CSV, go ahead.
I was going to say it's only 3 clicks. It's only 3 clicks away. It's sales, invoices, import. The way this reads is like you want that import link on the homepage, and we looked. You can't create a web link to it. It won't work. You just, you need to do those 3 clicks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're wanting a sample CSV, then you can also find that whenever you go through the import process. You can download a sample CSV to know exactly what that needs to be formatted as. But really, if you're starting with the CSV and that's your limitation, then you're going to have to follow the import process. Otherwise, if you do have availability, or if you are available to use the API, then certainly you can do that. It's just going to require consideration and setup to build that out.
But if he is using something like QuickBooks Online, he's just trying to get invoices from there to Zoho Books, you could do that by API. Yeah, just grab those invoices and put them in. Yeah,
certainly.
So,
yeah, probably needs Zoho Flow to do that if you're going to do it real time. Otherwise, you could write a scheduled function within Zoho Books that's going to grab all of the invoices created today and import them into Zoho Books. There's different ways to do that, but the API does exist.
All right. This next question comes from Todd Harden in Club Zenatta. This is a coding question. So, of course, it went to me, the proverbial nerd in Zenatta High. Tyler, of course, being the cool student body president, Josh, the captain of the basketball team, and Brett as the unstable principal. Todd is asking, when calling Zoho CRM v4 APIs from Deluge scripts, using the invoke URL task, asking what connection should he use? And Todd notes that there's an existing system connection called internal Zoho CRM. You can also create a new connection and choose either Zoho CRM as the service or Zoho OAuth as the service. Then he's asking, have you noticed a special scope Zoho CRM.CRMAPI.all that's in the system connection one? Is that available to use in some of the other services? Well, Todd, give you just a couple of context on some of these. The internal CRM connection, that is
the unstable principle over here, Greg. Sorry.
Yep, the unstable principle. That is that's not one that you can use in invoke URLs. That internal system one is the one that automatically gets invoked whenever you do zoho.crm. Whatever method, create record, update record, search records. That's the service that gets invoked. So if you want to use the invoke URL to call a CRM API, say for the send mail task or upserting records, you can choose, as you mentioned, either Zoho CRM or Zoho OAuth. We here at Zenatta, we prefer to use the Zoho OAuth because sometimes there are some scopes that are in the Zoho OAuth that may not be in the CRM one. Also, if you might need to use scopes from more than one app in a single call, such as the code share that we had last week about linking a Zoho project to a deal, you have to have a connection that has both permission to talk to CRM and has permission to talk to projects. So that's why we tend to prefer using the Zoho OAuth because it's just a little more generalized, and you've got almost every scope in the entire Zoho sphere at your fingertips there.
All right, the next question is for Greg.
This one is also from Todd. So just continuing basically his coding conundrums, asks, how can I dynamically construct a URL to a given page in Zoho CRM? Specifically, how can I dynamically construct the base URL? My first challenge is obtaining the org ID, and my second challenge is obtaining or composing our data center specific base URL. Is there a helper method of some sort in Deluge to determine the data center so that we can construct the proper domain in the URL? How about Zoho CRM variables? It feels like a cheat, but maybe this is possible use of Zoho CRM variables, though I must admit I have not used them, so I don't know if we can access them from Deluge. So a couple of things here, Todd. One is if you're building a base URL for any CRM record, you actually don't have to put the org ID in there because Zoho will automatically redirect and put the org ID in there based on your login credentials. All right, so as long as you're logged into the Zoho ecosystem somewhere, if you have a link that doesn't have that org ID in it, it'll just figure out, oh, you're logged in as Todd Harden, so I'm automatically going to redirect you to your CRM that you're associated with. As for the data center, as far as I can tell, there is not a way to like pull your, like you could pull your org ID via API. You can get organization details, including the org ID via API call there. But data center does not come with it. You also, data center doesn't really change that often, I would assume. So I imagine you're probably always working in the same one, unless you are, I suppose, unless you may have customers that are in different data centers. But I don't think, I don't think that it just depends on where you're storing the data. I think even if your customers are like in, say, Australia or India or the EU, if you're sending them links, it's just based on whatever your data center is. So you can just hard code that as whatever it is that your data center is. I don't know. Have you guys ever encountered someone that does have multiple data centers with their organizations?
No,
so.
Micah would say I would make an org variable for the entire URL before the module name, and then just apply like the module name and then a list ID or a module name and a record ID. Because your org ID is always going to be the same for the app that you're in. If you're in like CRM versus campaigns, they might be different. Data center,
we have multiple clients that are in the EU or in some other data center. And when we access their account, it's not switching the data center. We're still accessing the .eu. So yeah, the quick answer is for the data center, that is always
the same, no
constant.
matter where someone is pulling it from.
And same with your org ID. So I agree with Tyler. Just use a CRM variable and define both the data center and the org ID directly in that variable, and then you're good to go.
Yeah. And to answer your question about Zoho CRM variables, you absolutely can access them via Deluge. There is an integrated task for that. It's zoho.crm.getOrgVariable, and then you just pass in the variable's API name, which you can find listed next to its display name in the list of Zoho CRM variables. But also, I really like how Todd is. It's the first time I've ever heard Zoho CRM variables as like a cheat. Like, don't worry, Todd, you don't have to feel bad about using Zoho CRM variables. No one's going to look at you and say, wow, you went to using CRM variables? Freaking weak, dude. You're a real beta male for using Zoho CRM variables. Promise you, they're there. They are there for a reason, and we are happy to see you use them.
I personally have lost all respect for Todd. So
CRM variables is one of those that came out within the last 2 years, I think. And honestly, I love them. I use them all the time whenever I can, because you likely have some sort of piece of data. Maybe it's an API key that needs to be shared or needs to be updated every once in a while. Or maybe you have a number field, number of days to complete something, and you want to reference that field in other Deluge scripts. Having that field or having the ability to create CRM variables has been a game changer, specifically in the CRM. I wish they would do something similar within Creator or other Zoho apps, because global variables are important.
All right, the next question comes from Joshua Alter. This is in Club Z over at Q&A for AZAAZ. Bulk user upload for Biggin. Oh, Joshua. You ask, is there a way to bulk upload users into Biggin? I have looked into Zapier as well and Zoho Flow, and I can't see an action to add a user. Hoping you can think of a way, and hoping this isn't building a custom topping. Well, let me tell you, Joshua. So I thought of a way. I thought of a way. So it's crazy, you know, I got this question, I'm poking around inside Biggin, and there is no way to upload a list of users. It just does not exist. But one of the things that it does have, and if you're using Zoho CRM, I'm assuming you have Zoho CRM as well, you can go into settings and you can go into data administration, and it has something there called import Zoho CRM. And this is going to import all your data. It's not even customizable. You click the button and it says next, and you click next and it goes, we'll let you know when it's done. So it's not like you can say, I only want to import my users, or I only want to import deals or whatever. It's going to import it all. So I did that this morning, just running a little test for you here to see if in fact it would pull the users over, and it does. It pulls the users over beautifully. But it turns out that years ago, when Biggin first came out, over on the CRM side, we had turned on a synchronization, which evidently has never worked, because otherwise all those users would have been over in Biggin and there was really no data in Biggin. And when you import from the CRM over to Biggin, it doesn't copy over any of the CRM IDs. So all of the records came over, and all of the users came over beautifully, and their permissions, whether an admin or a regular user, those all came over beautifully. All was great. Problem was solved. And then throughout the morning, all hell broke loose over here at Zenatta, as Biggin then wrote back all that data into the CRM for virtually every single record and duplicated everything, because it thought, oh, look at all these new records that aren't over in CRM. And it duped up our entire CRM. So make sure that you do not have the CRM sync turned on. And by the way, if you're not using Zoho CRM, you can just do a little free trial, because it does have an import users function. So you can import your users into CRM, and then you can click that button and import them over to Biggin. It's a bit of a crazy workaround. It's caused us hell. Have we fixed it yet, guys, or do we still have 5,000 dupes, 6,000 dupes in our CRM?
Still working on deleting those.
Yeah. So anyway, Tyler's blood pressure has been up all day long. We were scrambling around.
And I blame you, Joshua. I blame you.
They've been trying to solve this for about 2 hours, and I kind of went into the chat and said, hey guys, maybe it was this. And sure enough, that was it. So anyway, Joshua, that is the only workaround I can find. Otherwise, there is no API. There is one at a time add to Biggin, but you can pull them on over from the CRM. So hopefully all of the pain and suffering we have gone through here, you will find helpful. Now, if you tell me it's 6 users you're trying to import, I need your address, because I need to come over. But anyway.
Billing information.
Anyway, Joshua, that's the only way we can find to do it. But it was pretty crazy.
We're talking about Biggin. Is there ever a use case to use Biggin and CRM? And what is that use case? When would a client ever want to use both Biggin and the CRM?
Imagine you got your primary CRM, big CRM, fully kitted out, tons of custom modules, like Josh, in the past, like you've built like a bond yield calculator in a CRM, they can do anything. But then let's say you had a sales team that they were just responsible for setting up meetings with the closers. And they just gathered some really light information. They were driving around. They're going to conferences. They're going all these different places. You might want to sync your big CRM with your kind of lightweight mobile adept CRM and have like the team do that like early prospecting process in Biggin. And then it kind of gets handed off to like the big CRM for the rest of the process. That's always weird, right? I have thought what they think people are going to use Biggin for, what Zoho kind of intends it to be used for. But yeah, I've never been 100% sure.
I agree with you, Tyler, though. I think it's for salespeople who just want a standard, simple, pipeline-driven CRM, where they're just moving deals through the stages, because it has a beautiful Kanban view. It manages multiple pipelines. It does all that exceptionally well. So I think it's like, hey, sales guys, we're going to give you something super simple. Although they keep adding so much to it. I mean, it seems like every other CRM Zen show, it's like, oh, here's a new feature. And sometimes they're adding features to it that aren't in Zoho CRM, where we're like, well, that needs to be over in Zoho CRM. but it's not there yet. And then you find things like this, Joshua, where you just can't import a list of users. So anyway.
Well, this one is for me here. So after watching Shopify to Zoho inventory integration and automation, Tyler Resto asks, thank you for this. You're welcome. How do I do multiple packages in one order? Do you have a resource I could use to do this? So I'm going to share my screen, and quick answer is you can do this in either a sales order that you create manually. If you're creating these sales orders directly inside of Zoho Books and you want to create multiple packages for this sales order. So the one I'm looking at here has an item A, a 2 quantity. I sold 2 of this item A, and I want to create 2 packages, let's say. So certainly you can create certain 2 packages. I go ahead and create a package, and I say, in this, I'm going to pack 1, and I click save. And now it's partially packed, and I can see 1 packed, 1 invoiced. Let's say I want to create another package. Go in here. Let's see, how do I create another package? Where am I? There should be another. Am I missing it? Convert. Oh, create package. There we go. Sorry about that. Create another package, and it's just 1 left. So 1 packed, 1 left to pack. Click done. Now this sales order is fully packed and ready to go. I could create 2 shipments, or I believe I can pack these both in 1 shipment. Let's see. So if I ship manually and package, and then I choose the other package if I want to. So both of these packages could go out in 1 shipment and have 1 tracking number, or you could create 2 separate shipments. So that's if you're doing this straight from within Zoho Books. Maybe your orders are coming in through Shopify and you're fulfilling through Zoho Books. That's how you would do it. Otherwise, if you want to fulfill through Shopify, which I'm assuming you're doing because that's what the question, you responded to a comment on one of those videos where I go over the Shopify integration. If you're using Shopify to fulfill, then you should be able to use the same flow that I had built in that video. So within the flow, we are checking if when a fulfillment is created, and you could have multiple fulfillments on 1 Shopify order. So you, let's say, again, inside of Shopify, your order has 2 items. You fulfill 1 item and that gets shipped. And then the next one, you're going to fulfill that one as well. That's going to create 2 separate fulfillments, which should trigger the same workflow. Now, I haven't actually tested this within the Shopify, creating 2 separate fulfillments and watching that create 2 separate packages and shipment orders within Zoho Books using this flow. So that's still something that I would need to test, but it should work based on the trigger here. This is triggered whenever a fulfillment is created. It's not necessarily when the order is completely fulfilled. It's whenever a fulfillment is created, and you should be able to create multiple fulfillments on a Shopify order. If that's not working, let me know, and I can do a further test of that. But certainly, it should work just fine. There might be some small tweaking that needs to happen, but this process should work just fine.
Yeah, and like Josh said, if it's not working, just let him know. You can call him at 273-555-4816. He loves to just hear from you.
That is not a real number.
All right, this next one comes from Club Z from Roseanne Larson. Hi, hoping there is a solution here. Been looking for a while. In Zoho CRM, I would like that every time a specific field in the account is updated, a specific field in all the related contacts is also updated. That was all in upper caps, so that's why I read it that way. I see you can buy an extension and pay monthly, but here in South Africa, that is expensive. Does it have to be custom code? Thanks. With a follow-up comment, I'm also wondering if global sets might solve this. If you apply a global set to one module and the same one to another module, if you update the value chosen on one module, does it update on the other? I currently have another bug with saving my account layout, so I haven't been able to check that until Zoho shows me how to fix that bug. Well, Roseanne, first on the global sets, unfortunately, that doesn't quite work the way that you are hoping it to. Global sets helps keep values consistent so that if, I don't know, let's say I had a pick list of account statuses of active and inactive, and I have that as a global set tied to a pick list on all the contacts as well. Where the global set comes in is that if I wanted to change that from saying active and inactive to like live and dead, or good and bad, I don't know, then any values in the other modules that are already set to that value would now update to the new overall value. But if I go and change, but linking global sets doesn't work on a record-to-record basis, where if I change something on the account, that the contacts would get related as well. So, unfortunately, this is going to have to use some custom code, but don't you worry, Roseanne, because we have got ourselves a code share for you. This one I've got set up already at Club Zenatta, which also, if you're not already in Club Zenatta, you totally should be, because as you can see over here, we've got discussion forums, our code share, as well as things that we're noticing, the Q&As for this very show, as well as requests if you would like to see us make specific video tutorials. This code share is on updating related fields on related CRM records. Per your question, this specifically is going to be using COQL, also known as CRM Object Query Language. It's going to help keep our code nice and clean and efficient. So first, you'll need to create a workflow rule, which will be triggered on edit of an account. And in this case, I have the field called client status. It's, whatever your field is, you want to select. The rule should be on edit, not create or edit, just edit, so that then you can specify one particular field, whichever one field you're trying to link between accounts and contacts. When it's modified to any value, and then there's a little box you can check to say repeat this whenever that modification happens. If there are additional filters that you want to have, you can put those down here in the conditions. But if you want to just happen to any account that gets changed that way, you can just leave it set to be executed for all accounts. Then you'll want to come down here to instant actions, create a function. Then you'll get to your function edit screen, and you'll want to input this code. Now the function that we're going to add, it is going to take account ID as the input argument. And then you will also, the other sort of prerequisite for this is that you have a connection made with Zoho OAuth, which we talked about a little bit earlier with Todd's questions, that at a minimum has the scope zohocrm.coql.read. So now this is as you can see, it's not a very long piece of code. But what we do is for the COQL, first we build a query map. All right, this is going to be basically, we're constructing a sentence for the API to interpret and get us the fields that we want filtered according to our specifications. In this one, we're going to select every query. You are selecting what fields you want from what module you want to pull from, and then where certain conditions or criteria are met. So in this case, I'm going to select ID, account name .account status from the contacts module. So I'm actually pulling from the children's records. I'm not pulling the account record and doing a get related records. Instead, I'm kind of working bottom up. So we pull in the contact ID, and then you can use because account name is the lookup field on the contact to accounts, you do that lookup field API name, account _ name, then a dot, and then any field on the account. So in this case, I'm using the example of an account underscore status. Whatever your field is, you can replace it with that. Then you can also notice I have an as here, as account underscore status. That's just when it returns the response. It won't have the account name dot in front of it. Just kind of helps things be a little bit cleaner, and it's going to make inputting this into our update API call much easier. And then the conditions that I have here is that the account underscore name dot ID should equal account ID that I get as the input argument for my function. Then we do an invoke URL task. This is available on the Zoho API help documentation. If you just Google Zoho Coquel, it's going to be the first result. You pass in this URL of zohoapis.com/crm/v4/Coquel is called a post type, because even though I'm getting information, I'm posting a request. Then we take that query method we built up here, convert it to a string, and then we add in whatever the name of the connection is that we made that has that zohocrm.coquel.read scope. It's going to come back inside of a element called data, and it's going to be a giant list of records. Although in this case, because we're just looking for contacts from a specific account, you should only get back as many records as contacts there are on the particular account you're looking at. Then I have a little statement here to just make sure that we actually have at least one contact to work with. So if coqueldata.size is not 0, then we're going to update contacts. And we have this zoho.crm.bulk update, which is very useful for updating multiple records all at once. All you have to do is just pass in a list of the maps where each map contains the ID number of the already existing record, and then just any other parameters that you want to update. So because our Coquel query, I already have the ID from the contact in there, and I already renamed the account status field to whatever API name it is in the contact record. So it's possible that account status may have a different name in accounts. It might have a different name in contacts. You just want this one to be whatever the API name is in contacts. And then the Coquel data is already pre-formatted for you to use in this bulk update. So all you have to do is just pass in that Coquel data, say that you're updating the contacts module, bada bing, bada boom, you done it. That's it. Now your contacts have all been updated with that account status or whatever account field it is that you are updating. So as I mentioned down here, the nice thing about using this Coquel API is that it allows you to pre-format. You don't need to build a bunch of individual maps or lists. So it's already ready to use in that bulk update task. Now, a disclaimer on this one, this particular piece of code assumes that you have less than 100 contacts on any given account, because the Zoho CRM bulk update method can only update 100 records at a time. So if you do have more than 100 contacts in an account, which is pretty rare, I feel like I don't see that too often, then you would need to introduce some kind of pagination into this so that you would go through your list of Coquel data and every 100 records run the update and then jump back into your list and continue on. But yeah, I know that was a big deep dive, but hey, when you're the president of the mathletes at Zenatta High, you can't help but just get a little stuck in the weeds. So there are, Rosanna. Hope you find that one useful. And it's a request that we get all the time. So hopefully anybody else out there, I'm sure will find something like this useful. Very easy. You just need to replace a couple of module and field names in that Coquel query to match whatever it is that you're trying to update.
Wow. And I've had a little insomnia lately. I'm just going to watch this clip over and over again as I go to bed at night. It's going to be good for me, I think. It'll be
bullying. It's just feeding into Greg's perception of this like high school drama thing. That's just bullying right there is all that is.
Yeah, and it's the principle.
I do want to say, though, back on that question a little bit. If, I think for a lot of people, that's more than they can handle, right? And that's why the extension you're referring to there was written by Blue Root, and I think it's called Wes, and it'll let you do that. But yes, they do charge you monthly. You also can probably find a Zoho developer that'll do it for $50 and write that for you. If you want to go to Fiverr or something, like if you're a little lost on that, if you want to drop us an email, we can refer you out to somebody that'll do it, $50, $100, and it'll all be done for you and you won't have to worry about it. But it really, honestly, although I think, Greg, it can look difficult, it's really not all that difficult. I mean, it's going to take a little playing around on the back end there. I mean, it was really a great explanation, all kidding aside. So.
Okay, next one we have here is a question from Elizabeth Clark. In this question, she's asking, I got an odd dilemma with validation rules on invoices in Zoho books. Our use case is that we need to prevent any invoices being edited or marked as sent, which I believe triggers the edit action anyways, if they have a date prior to present day. Zoho support suggestion was the following validation rule, and she adds an image to the post of the validation rule that she had created. By the large, this does the job, but we're having some issues with it as it sometimes triggers the following rule when applying payments and credits to an invoice, but not all the time. It would be easy to understand if it blocked all payment applications, but it's intermittent and I can't identify a pattern. Do you have any suggestions on how to tweak this to fix, or alternative methods of handling the use case? It's hard to know for sure. I was testing this out. I did recreate that validation rule inside of Zoho Books, and I can confirm that that validation rule will trigger on payment applications. So when you're applying a payment to an invoice, that's technically editing the invoice, and it will throw an error message if that validation rule does not pass. So if you put in a status, the invoice status is not paid, and you try to add a payment, then it will throw a validation error saying you can't add this because the status did not match. So as far as it working intermittently, I'm not sure why it would work sometimes, but not for others. And I would need to debug that a little bit further to see exactly when it is working, why it would work, because I wasn't able to actually get it to work in any case for payments, at least. I did not test it for mark as sent or doing any other related actions to the invoice. But payments I did test it on, and I also did obviously test it on just editing the invoice directly. So I'm not sure why it would work. I would need probably a screen recording or get on a call to review that further to see what maybe we could identify the pattern.
Again, that number is 278-555-1543.
Because Elizabeth is a super user of ours, right? I mean, Elizabeth, I think we've offered her publicly on air a job like 20 times, and she always turns us down. Yeah. Some of the code shares of the week are Elizabeth's code shares. So this is when I saw this question, I was curious.
It's going to be a humdinger if Elizabeth is stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. No workarounds we can even come up with, guys.
Not as far as validation rules, like preventing the record being edited or marked as sent or payments being added. Related record actions are going to trigger that validation rule. And if you're wanting to prevent record actions, the only way to do it is through a validation rule. So I'm not sure how a workaround to that. Tyler or Greg, could you think of a way to prevent? Brett, do you think of a way that you could prevent actions on a record?
I mean, if it's locked for approval, I know in CRM sometimes you can kind of cheat code your way into locking things within an approval flow, but I don't like doing that. It's kind of like a last resort. I know they're bringing, I don't know, maybe we're not supposed to talk about it, but I know they're bringing record locking to CRM in the not too distant future without having to put it in a endless approval flow, that never gets approved. So maybe that in the future, there'll be some way to kind of lock records once they've hit a certain level of, completeness or based on certain dates related to those. But yeah, I don't know of any quick workarounds on this issue.
Well, and if you are using CRM to, maybe push this data into books, there are sort of field locking capabilities in client scripting now, which you could use to, if there's like, I guess you could lock pretty much every field via client script if you wanted. But if there's also just like a couple of key fields that you want to lock down, you can do that if you're up to some JavaScripting.
Yeah. When I have trouble with validation, Elizabeth, I just stand in front of a mirror and go, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. And that, I'm not sure that'll help you with this problem, but
it helps Brett with his.
Maybe you'll feel a little better about yourself at the end of the day.
The life of a Zoho developer, you need to do that a lot. You got to keep your spirits high somehow.
It's true.
Let's see. Last question here before we derail any further. This is a question asked over on YouTube on the video Zoho Projects Task Dependencies 2021, a beginner's tutorial. This question from Bonnie Smith. She asks, do you recommend not using due dates then if you are using this, just duration? So yeah, good question. So this is when you are setting up your dependencies. Now, I don't remember, I'll answer this both ways. I don't remember if this video is specifically about doing it in a template or doing it live on a real project. So if you're doing it on a template, you won't need to set any due dates. Everything is based on counts of days or counts of hours, counting up from the start date of that project. So at a template level, the due date gets calculated and set for you based on the start date of the project plus the start after number of days on the task, and plus the duration on the task. And it'll compute what the due date should be based on when the project creates. So on the template side of the house, no, you won't need to set any due dates. You'll just set all these different kind of like cadence values, and then dependencies between those tasks. Now, if you are on a project, not on a template, definitely set the due dates. I think this question is probably about templates, but if you are in a normal project, definitely do set the due dates. They should have a start date, duration, and due date set up. I believe, guys, and if I'm not crazy, if you have a start date and you add a duration, it'll add the due date for you automatically in a live project. I could be mistaken there.
Yes,
definitely recommend. Go ahead.
It does work both ways. It's either if you type in a duration and there's no end date, it'll add the end date. Or if you add a start and an end date, then it should autofill the duration. I believe it does either one.
Got it. So kind of pick a preference there, right? In terms of which one makes the most sense to fill in. But you definitely want that due date in there, right? A task without a due date is unlikely to get done before that due date. So definitely want them in there. At a template level, you won't need to add them. At a project level, like Greg is mentioning, kind of add a duration or a due date. And as long as you have a start date, everything else will work itself out for you.
All righty, guys. Wow, we went long. Hour long AZAAZ today.
Yeah.
That's a good one. You warned me ahead of time this morning, Tyler. Hey, as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching the show. And if you have any questions or comments and you want to get a hold of us over here at Zenatta, you can go to zenatta.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, you can click Book a Meeting. We've actually added a new field to that where you can choose Please Not Greg as well. And we'll get in touch with you straight away.
On the website is where you'll find complete episodes of our podcast, The CRM Zen Show, where we cover all the news in the world of Zoho every single week. If you want that news delivered to your inbox every Monday, please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter.
And if you want access to today's code share, as well as any future code shares, head over to club.zenatta.com and join our online community.
If you're looking to train your team, our senior consultant, Drew Brockbank, has been working on a series of CRM trainings and is working on projects training as well. So if you're interested in that, go visit zenatta.com/training.
Last but not least, please be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube, as well as your choice of podcast app. And we'll see you next Wednesday.